Greetings and welcome to the Able Youth Tennis Sports Camp, coming to you live here in Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee, from the Centennial Sportsplex right here in Midtown. I'm your host, Cameron McCaslin, here with Amy Safel from Able Youth, joining us to talk about tennis today. Amy, welcome.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so excited for this moment. This is the first time that adaptive sports has been broadcast live in the state of Tennessee, and so this is a really exciting moment for everybody.
I am so proud to be a part of this broadcast and for NECAT to be the one to bring that to air for the first time. Amy, I know you guys have been out here all weekend practicing tennis and getting things ready for today, and we've got a bit of a exhibition here for us happening right now. Not a straight match exactly, but we're hoping we can explain some of the rules and show some of the action that happens here. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to see today.
Yeah, so we have been out here this weekend helping kids learn more about tennis. And so wheelchair tennis is usually played on a regular size court. The players get 2 bounces, and before they have to hit the ball, you will notice that they don't always even take the 2 bounces. Sometimes they don't need it, and so they just get to hit the ball whenever they can. But 2 is the absolute most. And in the close court here, we've got some of our older kids, and they are practicing on a full court. And then in the court, one court away, we've got our younger kids, and they are practicing, or they're playing on a short court. And tennis, the United States Tennis Association has really helped players really of all ages, and not just wheelchair players, but all of them, help them think differently about tennis. And so mostly you're used to seeing matches be on a full court, but if you want to create an event where it's shorter and so that it's easier for people to get to the ball, less movement, that is totally okay to do as well. And so that's what some of our younger kids are doing as their matches as well. They've yesterday kind of learned the technical side of tennis, and so they've learned forehands, backhands, and they've learned also volleys and then serves, and then they've started to do more of the tactical side of things. How would I go about constructing a point? I move around the court, and so these are the kind of things that they are practicing today. Most of the kids have played tennis before, but maybe not to this extent and not yet on a competitive level.
Now, Amy, can you tell me about some of the players that we're seeing out here on the court right now?
Yeah, most of these kids are affiliated with Able Youth, which is the local wheelchair sports youth organization that I am the executive director of. And so we've got kids here ranging in age from 7 to 15, and they all have some level of experience with wheelchair tennis, but again, like I said, maybe have not played competitively before, maybe have not played in a match or a tournament. And so for some of these, this is their first time getting to do that.
So for our viewers watching at home, Amy, can you talk a little bit about what Able Youth is? I know me and you have discussed it several times over the last few years, but for people that are tuning in for the first time, tell them what Able Youth is and what it does for people in our community.
Yeah, Able Youth is a local nonprofit that helps kids with physical disabilities learn how to be independent through adaptive sports. And so studies definitely show that kids who play any kind of adaptive sports as people with disabilities go on to raise their level of independence. They go on to, at a higher level, to hold jobs. And there's so much that good that does out of adaptive sports. A lot of them learn social skills. They create friendships with kids with disabilities and without, because they have lots more to talk to their classmates. And so Able Youth does tennis, but also does 2 travel wheelchair basketball teams. We do local Super Sports Saturdays, 1 Saturday a month. We participate in adaptive rock climbing through Catalyst Sports. We do local races. We have 2 kids this weekend. They're at the Gateway Games in Missouri, and they are competing in track and field, and then that meet also has some other sports as well. So kids can really learn and do anything that they want to do. They can kind of practice it and learn it, and then they can have opportunities to compete as well. And it's great to see kids come. A lot of kids or start with Able Youth when they get their first wheelchair. So sometimes we'll have kids as young as like 2 years old in our program, and then we go up through high school graduation and then help them get into their next stage of life.
Amy, I know you talked a little bit there about travel, and we've got some people that are from out of town today. Where are people coming from outside of Middle Tennessee?
Yeah.
For camp this weekend.
For camp this weekend, we've got a couple from Murfreesboro. We've got one from Chattanooga. We have a couple from Franklin. We've got Hendersonville. So we've got a little bit of everything. Just in general, though, we get kids in Able Youth coming from. Sometimes we get them from Knoxville. Sometimes on our wheelchair basketball team, you have to play in the closest team to your home. So we even had kids coming from as far as southern Indiana before because we were the closest team to them. We are, mostly Middle Tennessee or mostly Tennessee, but we do have kids come because the need is so great for these kids to be able to learn what they can do and to be able to participate.
I think that's super fascinating. Again, I know we've had this conversation several times over the years, but one of the things that really made a lot of sense to me was with Able Youth bringing people together who, again, look like each other. Look at that. Put that on camera, right? But just the idea of, having an opportunity to come together and play together. That's such a human thing to do, and so Able Youth being able to facilitate that, I think, is amazing.
Yeah, we hear from families and kids all the time that, they may never have met anybody with a disability who is their age, or maybe hasn't met somebody with their specific disability who is their age. And so I think that it's really great for these kids to be able to, when all week long they don't see anybody else with a disability, that their whole week. They come and they have friends here who have disabilities, and that they can become friends with people, and kind of everybody wants to be able to have somebody to relate to and to know that they go through the same things. And so I think that it's great for the kids to know that they have people who have the same frustrations or joys or anything that they do as well.
Now, I know wheelchair tennis is coming up on 50 years of action, and Able Youth has some history with the founder of that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Able Youth was actually founded in the late 90s, and it's founded on wheelchair tennis as Able Youth's very first sport. Our founder, Rick Slaughter, is definitely still into tennis, still into wheelchair tennis, but he was a internationally ranked wheelchair tennis player in his early or late teens and early adult years. And so he started the program, and like I said, the first sport was wheelchair tennis, and has grown since then. But Rick's history and his kind of journey to, after he acquired his disability, to being able to play wheelchair sports really just did him so much good in his life, and he was so grateful that he wanted everybody to be able to learn to play sports, and not necessarily for them to be the best athlete, but for them to learn the lessons and create the partnerships and the friendships and just all the benefits of adaptive sports. And so that's really is his biggest objective, is for kids to be able to experience the joys of adaptive sports.
I know you had mentioned at the top of the broadcast, this is the first time that we've put adaptive sports on television live in the state of Tennessee, but obviously NECAT and Able Youth have a long history at this point of working together through the basketball tournaments and things like that. And again, for the people watching at home who this may be their first time seeing any kind of sport like this, what are some of the other types of sports that Able Youth facilitates on their Super Saturdays and things like that?
So Super Sports Saturdays, because it's 9 to noon, 3 hours, usually have. So a lot of times tennis is included, and then a lot of times basketball is included. And like I talked about before, with tennis being very modifiable for kids' ability levels and their age and their strength, tennis is also like basketball like that, where maybe some weeks they're not scrimmaging against each other. Maybe they're practicing on passing or dribbling or maneuvering in their chair while they're dribbling a basketball. So that's something too that we do quite a bit. And then we've also done things like rugby, or we've done lacrosse, we've done volleyball. We've really done all kinds of things. We also will just not do even like a sport, but we'll make up obstacle courses for them to do. We'll do kind of like just different races. We'll also do, though, independence kind of things, because it's really important for our kids to learn independent skills, because they don't do things the way that their friends do. And so for them to learn, we sometimes will make a relay race out of an independent skill. So they'll have to go maybe to the other end of the gym and pick up like groceries and put them in a bag and figure out what's the best way for them to carry the grocery bags, like they were bringing the groceries in from either their shopping or bringing them into the house. And so they can figure out, okay, what is my best way to do that? They don't have to do things like my sister or my mom or my friends, but what's my best way to do things? And so sometimes we will fuse sports into those kinds of activities, and they're expected to kind of fuse the two and learn new adaptive skills for everyday use.
And variety is so important too, because I think you told me that like we obviously got a great turnout for the camp this weekend, but you've got other able youth athletes that have no interest in tennis, and they don't necessarily want to be here for this, but they may come out for one of the other sports that happens there. How many athletes do you think that are just like playing multiple sports at this point?
We actually really focus on them, trying to make them exposed to as many things as possible, just because you kind of never know what you're going to like until you're exposed to it.
Right.
And so Able Youth sees about 65 or so kids per year, and we try to make them have the ability to try as many things as they can, and hopefully at least one of them will stick, and maybe multiple of them will stick. We have several kids out here today that are really into tennis, but they also play on a wheelchair basketball team as well. We also have some kids who are going to the Peachtree Para Games in Atlanta in a few weeks, and so there they might compete in track and field, and yet they're doing tennis today here, or maybe they'll compete in archery and they're doing tennis today here. So we love for kids to just be familiar with how many things that are really possible for them in their lives.
I love that. As far as if someone wanted to see more about what Able Youth is doing, where can they find out more information?
We are at ableyouth.org, which is .org.
Fantastic. It looks like we had a little break in the action right here, but again, I think it's a great time again to just talk through all the great things that Able Youth is doing in the community. We've had so many just good memories over the years, for the basketball tournaments, to watching you guys do the rock climbing and all the other fun stuff that has kind of come together. Talk to me a little bit about the basketball tournament that we know is going to come back next summer.
That's actually probably going to be in February. It's usually in February on President's Day weekend. I'm working on getting the dates set, but we hope to have that on President's Day weekend. But that usually brings in around like 14 to 18 teams from around the country. Those are all youth teams, and there's 2 divisions, 2 age divisions on those. So you'll see kids playing from usually around 5 years old to about 18 years old. And if you maybe haven't seen wheelchair sports before, maybe this is your first time, if you see wheelchair basketball, you might think it's slow or that it's kind of, not competitive. But these kids, once they're told that they're allowed to compete and they're allowed to go hard and they're allowed to really get rough, then, that's what they're allowed to do. I think so many kids and have the perception, or have been told the perception, that people with disabilities, shouldn't be rough or shouldn't, be competitive, and you kind of learn that is, definitely not what's happening here. And so that's a lot of fun to see. And I think too, at those tournaments, kids are seeing, it's great that they're exposed to several dozen kids with disabilities through Able Youth, but then they go to these tournaments, and sometimes there's 300 people that have disabilities there, and they, really it broadens their horizons to think, it's not just me in Nashville, it's people all over, and it's all ages that are doing great things, and they're rocking it in life just like everybody else, playing sports and doing what they want to do. And so that's, I think, it's great for kids to see from that perspective too, just how many people with disabilities are out there, and for once they're not the minority, they're the majority in those gyms.
And I know historically that tournaments take place at MTSU. And, of course, our local team is the Music City Thunder.
Yes.
They just completed their season somewhat recently. How did they do this last year?
They did great. We have 2 divisions, 2 groups, like I said, and the prep division is the younger kids, and those are about 13 and under. You can turn 14 in the middle of the season. And then the other kids they're usually 14 and over, although sometimes the younger kids will also play a little bit on that team as well. And so the younger kids, we had a larger team of younger kids this year, and they did awesome. They made the national tournament, and they came out number 13 in the country, and that's a really big accomplishment. They came in as number 13 and then finished as number 13. Sometimes you'll get teams that, you kind of wonder if they're ranked properly, and they'll come out something, a lot different. They'll have losses, but they really held their own, and they did great. And then our older team did not go this year. They had a much smaller team and some people not able to participate. So they are excited for next year to have a little bit bigger team and to be able to, play and hopefully go to nationals next year.
I love that. Like I say, we're in the middle of a break in the action right now, but it looks like some of our players are getting coached up over here, taking a little break, maybe get some water, things like that. Again, important to hydrate on days like this.
For sure. It is hot out here.
I know you say all morning long, we would encourage everyone to drink their water, put on their sunscreen, and all that fun stuff. Amy, any other advice you would give our athletes today that from what you've seen, where do we think we're going? Because obviously they're getting better as they go through this camp, but what's the next step after camp? How do you compete in tennis as a member of Able Youth?
So it a little bit depends on what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. It's fine if they want to keep just coming to Super Sports Saturday and keep kind of doing it, little by little and recreationally, and tennis is a great sport for that, to just create relationships and just have fun playing. But there also are tournaments. There's a lot of tournaments here in the Southeast, and so we would love for some of the kids to be able to play in a tournament, and they'd be playing typically in a juniors division, so against kids about their own age. And so there's lots of and also there's some tournaments that are able-bodied and wheelchair tennis, but there's a lot of tournaments that are just wheelchair tennis, and so that's always great to participate in. So we're hoping that some of these kids can go to one of those tournaments here in the Southeast within the next year or so. And then we also are kind of looking and gauging what kids want to do, and so maybe getting some coaching that's more ongoing for those kids, maybe closer to their homes, that they can continue to play and practice.
Now, I know Able Youth has got some great alumni in its roster at this point. They've gone on to play college sports and play at the Paralympics and things like that. Can you talk to me about a couple of those players and who we might be seeing on television now, like ESPN, things like that?
Yeah, so we have one alum who was in the Paris Paralympics named Zion, who is playing in the wheelchair rugby team, and so he's going to be going to Auburn. I think I can say that now for this freshman year, and he'll be continuing though on the Team USA rugby team, and so that would be exciting for him. We also though have one of our alums is the coach at the University of Texas Arlington's women's wheelchair basketball team, and so she has also played internationally and is great to be able to help those athletes kind of reach their next potential, and has also been traveling and doing a business where she is helping younger kids be able to reach that next level. So she's doing a lot here. And then I think we've got several kids who are looking in the next few years to be able to play collegiately. We have some kids who want to play wheelchair basketball collegiately, and then we've got some kids here that we're developing today who I think are going to want to play tennis. And so I know that there's around a dozen colleges that offer wheelchair basketball, but then there's, I think, even an increasing number that offer wheelchair tennis, because you don't have to have, if you were fielding a team of wheelchair basketball, you would have to have maybe 12 athletes. In tennis, you don't have to have quite that much, so it's easier to create that team. And so we're hoping that some of the kids will be able to play collegiately, and kind of as a result of this event, kind of have them work towards that. And so we have a couple kids wanting to do that as well. And so that's really a great thing for kids to do, is during the summer have kids or have coaches who are or have been collegiate athletes. We have one coach here who played actually both wheelchair basketball and wheelchair tennis at the University of Alabama. They're definitely a big team in adaptive athletics and adaptive sports. And then, there's several other about a dozen, like I said, colleges out there, and so some of them will be looking at going to camps for wheelchair basketball at those as well, so they get the experience of being on a college campus just in general as a student and kind of seeing what that's like, but then also getting coached by some coaches that are coaching collegiately and other players that are playing collegiately, and they can kind of tell them what it's like to be a collegiate wheelchair athlete.
Amy, it looks like we've got some players back on the court at this point to kind of again start our what we call it, a scrimmage, or would we call it a presentation? It's not really a match, but
they are kind of keeping score, but not exactly in the way that you would if you were to say watch the U.S. Open. But yeah, we have some kids on the far court serving, and they're serving to these girls here, and they are learning how to, when the ball is served, how quickly they have to move their chair, because you don't quite know where it's going, and they have to get their chair up there to be able to hit the ball and to return the ball. So they have to watch, and when the ball is thrown up, they should be taking their first big push, and then as the ball is hit, they should be taking their second and push and kind of figuring out where to go from there.
Now, it seems like our players are trying to position themselves where the ball is at the side of the chair. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so in wheelchair tennis, if it's coming straight to the middle of your body, and this is actually that way in able-bodied tennis as well, if it's coming straight to the middle of your body, it's very hard to block it and get a good hit. So you're trying to get it to come off the side a little bit of you so that you can hit your forehand or your backhand. And also what happened there, and this happens in able-bodied tennis too, is if you're only as tall as you are.
Right.
And so if you got somebody who hits a higher shot and you can't reach, that's just how it is sometimes.
Now, so it seems like most of the power obviously is coming from the shoulder on this, but also it's like some spin from the wheel and from the torso and things like that. What is the mechanics of that in your mind? Like, what is the best way to approach it?
You gotta know, I think too, how to hold your racket and how to swing through. So a lot of times if you're trying to lift the ball, you've got to know and be ready to swing low to high. But if you want to create a certain kind of spin, then you want to be able to go not quite low to high. You want to be able to go a different way so that the racket comes underneath the ball and creates some spin. So it really depends on what you're trying to do and how the ball is coming towards you, because sometimes that will dictate how you're swinging. And so it kind of depends on what you're given and the shot that you want to choose and where your opponents are. If you realize that there's a hole in the middle and you want to try to hit it down the middle because there's no players there, then that's a great strategy as well. So it just kind of depends on where you are and where your opponents are.
So it seems, traditionally, if you wanted to spin your chair like a 180-degree circle, you would grab one wheel and turn it one way and one wheel and turn it the other. But here you got a racket in one hand. What is the movement there to help get that extra torque by spinning your chair?
So you've got that's kind of, I think, where people figure out what size racket grip they want. So you have to be able to use that hand that you are holding your racket with to push your chair as well. So you can't just push with one side or you'll just keep going in circles. So you've got to really figure out how to do that. Also, these players are really tightly, they have a strap that really gets them tight in their chair, so that if they're wanting to get some more oomph to their ball, they can use their body, or if they're wanting to go a certain way, they can move their body a certain way, and it will help their chair be able to go that direction.
Now, I know some of our athletes, not all, but some athletes use a special adaptive chair just for sports than the one that they may use in their daily use. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Pretty much everybody wants to do that.
Yeah.
Because, first of all, it's great mechanically for the sport that you're trying to play. So you can see the camber of the wheels, which the wheels are pointed out, and that helps them be able to turn quickly.
Right.
They need to be able to turn quickly, and so the camber helps them do that. You'll see that they have small wheels in the front and in some cases in the back as well.
And the small wheels, they seem like almost skate wheels. Is that how do you describe that?
Yeah, it kind of is close to that.
Okay.
And that is because they're really going to be able to move their body in different ways, and so it helps them not be able to fall over so much. You for sure do see people who really go all out and do turn their chairs over, and they're able to get back up and things like that. But that is something that they want to try to keep their chair more steady, so they do that. Their foot plates in the front of their chairs is also helps create the positioning of their legs where they want to be able to play their sport. And so those are kind of the major differences in terms of tennis. You know, you try to figure out, I don't know that any of the kids right now have it this way, but they'll put their tennis ball that they're not using in their spokes a lot of times.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll put it in their lap kind of underneath their strap, but they'll also put it in their spokes to be able to, when they're serving next and they, get two serves, and they can just pull out the tennis ball to serve the next ball. And so that is something that they, do in there. But the other thing too that I think, sometimes people are like, well, why don't they just use their sports gear all day long? You don't fit through any doors.
Right.
You don't fit. You can't go to the bathroom. You can't get into your home. You can't really get anywhere.
Well, and I would imagine too, not to get like too personal, but it's just like if you're out here sweating and doing all the things, it's like a pair of gym shorts where like you need to
for sure
clean it up and air it out.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to be using necessarily the same chair all the time.
Yeah.
So that is helpful for them to be able to do as well. That to be able to just have something that's only gets used. And then too, like if you're in the community, you pick up a lot of hair, maybe things or dirt in your wheels, and that's not great to be able to kind of slows the wheels down, and so you want to keep them kind of clean and to moving fast, and so you really want to keep your sports chair to be what you play normally.
Well, what would you say, as far as you said, not all athletes are able to do that, but like, what is the cost of a chair like that whenever it comes to like trying to get a sponsorship or just trying to pay for it out of pocket for cash? What does something like that cost?
Yeah, these chairs are around $4,000
Yes,
and
this is
so,
substantial.
Yeah, and that's, for able-bodied kids, if you want to play tennis, you just have to own a pair of shoes and get or buy a racket. And so for these kids to be able to play well, even just for fun, to be able to have a sports chair makes a huge difference. And so Able Youth helps pay for those chairs for kids to be able to loan out. It is also different too because so we have kids ranging here from age 7 to 15, and so the chair that they use at 7, they're probably not going to be able to use it at age 11.
Right.
And so that's $4,000 each couple of years for kids, for families that are already having to pay for medical costs for things, for just normal family living is expensive these days, and so it's definitely a hefty load.
Good return.
And so we're happy to be able to help them, their kids be able to do those things.
So, Amy, I don't want to let that pass over again by giving people another chance to know where they can find out more about you, because there are the people that may want to come participate in something like camp or Super Sport Saturday, but you also may have people that just want to donate to help fund one of these chairs. Where
Absolutely.
can they do that?
Anything helps. I know $4,000 sounds like a lot, but $5 or $10 adds up to those $4,000. But you can go to ableyouth.org, and you can donate. You can learn more about us. We're also on social media at Facebook and Instagram, where you can learn, and you'll see lots of pictures of our event this weekend. And also, I think it's important to also know that you don't have to be a full-time wheelchair user to play any adaptive sport. A lot of times people will have either an amputation where they walk with a prosthetic, or maybe they'll have something like cerebral palsy or spina bifida where it doesn't prevent them from being able to walk during the day, but they maybe wouldn't be steady enough to play sports. And that's completely fine. You do not have to be a full-time wheelchair user. You don't have to own a wheelchair to be able to play. That is also something that we can help out with, for kids, like we talked about, we help kids who don't have a sports chair. They may have their regular chair, day chair, and that's not good to play. We also have kids come who don't use a wheelchair at all, full time and wouldn't even have a daycare to even play in if they wanted to. And so that is also an option that you don't have to be a full-time wheelchair user to play.
We'll go back and talk a little bit about NECAT and kind of what NECAT Able Use Partnership, which has been years long at this point. But, so one of the things that we have tried to encourage is to show people all the different paths to sports through television. Amy, I know you've had the ability to go through and take the classes and have a show on NECAT yourself and special guests on I don't know how many different talk shows and things. We were together, recently. But it's like, and of course things like this. But just the idea that like if you to give athletes, it's always good to play and participate. But professionally, there are also paths to do things like, work on video boards and work on television broadcasts. And can you talk to me a little bit about that and kind of what your hope for the future is with things like that?
So, I think kids without disabilities think, oh, well, I'm going to want to be an NFL quarterback when I'm an adult, or I want to be in the NBA, or I want to be, the next soccer star. And the kids that get to do that as a career in general are very small. And so, that's one thing, but when you look at how many jobs out there are related to sports, and so many of them are media related, that you can have for sure a lifelong career in sports in something. And so the same kind of thing is applicable to our kids. Maybe they can't be a quarterback because they're a wheelchair user, although I will say that there is wheelchair football. There's a league for that as well. But, maybe that's not going to be their profession, but they can have a job in the NFL in media in all kinds of different ways. And so for our kids to be able to learn the skills behind the scenes with media, which NECAT has just been so grateful. We've been so grateful to NECAT to be able to help kids learn, and I think that they're really learning that there's so many ways to have a pathway as a career in sports. And when I said before that kids who play sports go on at a much higher level to be employed than kids who don't, then you're helping us prove that these kids can do it and help them kind of prove that statistic that they are very capable of having a job one day, and they're getting the training to be able to do that from a younger age.
That was a good point there here at our exhibition match. So just someone come back over the net and saw a double bounce, which is the standard rule in wheelchair tennis, that everything is allowed 2 bounces, like Amy had said before, but not necessarily that they have to take it.
And I think too here, also realizing that some of the goals is just practicing, and maybe they don't hit a perfect serve, which if you watch the U.S. Open, they don't get it right all the time either. Or, maybe they don't hit it over the net, but they got to the ball. They really, planned right and kind of the building blocks to being able to win that point were there. And, so it's all about learning this weekend.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And again, it's like, we wouldn't compare this to something like Wimbledon or the U.S. Open anyways, because even for any kind of tennis, that's the best in the world. And that's really the only tennis that you see on television anymore is the best of the best players. And we like to hope that some of these players in the long run will represent their sport and be the best of the best. But like Amy said before, this is about learning this weekend, about an exhibition, kind of teaching each other how to play this sport and teaching everyone here at home watching on television some of the different rules and, again, just some of the different possibilities that are happening right here in Music City through Able Youth.
And I think when you think about it, this started yesterday. So some of the kids have played some, but this is a little bit more intense. And so when you're thinking about some of these kids learned some of these skills yesterday.
Yeah.
And they are putting these skills to use. And so I think it's great to see the progress that they've made since yesterday, and that, no matter what part of it they are getting right and the success they're having, this is a way to set them up for success in the future and for things to be able to have more success in the future.
Yeah, we've seen so much great teamwork and sportsmanship, and just I haven't heard anyone yelling or swearing or getting upset.
No, everybody's been really happy, and and it's not just because the cameras are on. I can attest that I've been here the whole time, and everybody has been really great to each other, really encouraging, and I think that everybody understands that everybody is just learning, and that everybody is just trying their best and to try to raise their game, and so it's been really great to see the kids be so encouraging.
I know we've got some coaches that are, of course, giving instruction. Can you talk to us a little bit about our coaches that we've had out this weekend?
Yeah, we have 2 kind of head coaches that are both from Alabama. One is named Cliff, and he works at the Lakeshore Foundation in Birmingham, Alabama, which is a big center for adaptive sports in Birmingham. And so he's been great helping our kids, both of the levels that we have, kind of the more beginners and the more older kids. And then we also have Avery Camp, and she is a former collegiate wheelchair tennis player and actually also a wheelchair basketball player at the University of Alabama. And so I think she's been great so that they can see it from a wheelchair user's perspective and that they can see, oh, you know, I can take this to the next level. I can play in college, and to give them things to strive for.
I think that's super exciting. Again, I know, like you say, we've got players here from Alabama. I know you've got some alumni that are at Auburn, we talked about earlier. There's all the different colleges that have these sports. We love those spaces. We love that the people are able to graduate out of Able Youth and continue to find places to play. That's so important. I don't remember the last time I played tennis. I played it in high school, and then at a certain point just kind of stopped doing that, and probably would have been good for me to keep that up. So for everyone still playing, more power to you.
Well, also, I think it's a great kind of point into that tennis, you can play with people without disabilities who aren't in wheelchairs. And so for them, we've had kids that have played on their high school team and kids that can just play with their friends. And so I think it's great for them to be able to create relationships with people with disabilities and also with people who don't. Yeah.
Well, Amy, it looks like we're wrapping up out here on this match, so we need to go ahead and probably call this one done today for our first live broadcast. One more time, tell people where they can find Able Youth on the internet.
We are at ableyouth.org, which is .org, and then also on Instagram and Facebook.
And one last time, I'm Cameron McCaslin coming to you live from Centennial Sports Complex here at Metro Parks, Nashville and Music City, USA with the lovely Amy Stafel. Amy, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Cameron.
And for everybody else watching at home, go play some tennis with your friends and check out Able Youth online. We'll see you next time.